Deadly Omen has brought with it a bunch of changes to a ton of different aspects of the game, and so it can be hard to keep track of which operators are now stronger than ever, and which have seen better days. And so today I'm going to detail every character that has received a nerf or buff in some capacity in Operation Deadly Omen. There's actually not too many explicit nerfs and buffs to characters this season, and so I'm going to be including characters who are receiving a sort of indirect nerf or buff due to changes that were made to other areas of the game. With that said, we're going to start off with one of the very few explicit nerfs that we have this season, and that would be Azami. This nerf pertains to her Kiva barriers, which now have a health pool which can be whittled down simply just by shooting at them. The intention of this is obviously to make Azami less potent and have more trouble holding down an area and give the attackers more resources to deal with it. Next up, as an indirect buff due to the Azami change, we have Kali. Kali was already a semi-decent counter to Azami, since her gadgets could destroy Kiva barriers. However, it always felt like a bit of a waste using a Kali lance on a Kiva barrier, especially if the lance got ADS'd or wide. Well, now Kali is actually one of the most efficient ways of clearing Kiva barriers, since her sniper will only take 3 shots to destroy one every time. Hopping back over to the nerf side, we have a pretty indirect one coming to Ying, Amaru, and Maestro. Now that might seem like a random bunch of operators, but they all have one thing in common, and that is that their most used primary weapon is an LMG. LMGs are taking a big hit this season, now having a super long ADS time, as well as actually slowing down your character's movement speed. Of course, I am aware these guys do actually have a second primary available, but let's be real, they're all far inferior to their LMGs. For that reason, I would consider all of these characters to be nerfed in this update. Next up, I feel any character who is somewhat reliant on repelling is getting a buff this season, and the first two characters I thought of were Blackbeard and Osa. Basically, any character that spends a lot of time repelling in any given round is getting a buff this season due to the new and improved repel mechanics. Repelling is overall now much faster and much smoother to operate, and so operators that have to do a lot of it are going to notice the difference this season. I understand that is a bit of a reach, but there's not a lot of buffs and nerfs coming this season, so cut me some slack. Back over on the nerf side, we have Finka. This is only a small change that you might not even notice is now gone, but Finka has lost the reload speed buff that her surge provided. But in return, the only thing that she gets is something that pertains to shield operators. So her surge has lost a feature which affected every character with a weapon, and in return got one that only affects characters that have shields. So if you ask me, that certainly seems like she's losing out in this update. I am really beginning to scrape the barrel on the buff side, but the next buff that I have is Sens, and I suppose any other character that has a throwable gadget. You might be able to see that this is actually pertaining to the new trajectory lines, and that is a big buff to any character that has to throw things, but as I mentioned, especially Sens, because their gadget kind of just goes wherever the fuck it wants when you throw it, but now you're going to have much more visibility and hopefully much more control when you let go of that gadget, and so hopefully some Sens plays are much easier to pull off this season. Next up, we have quite a few nerfs, those being Mozzie, Thorn, Pulse, Smoke, Warden, and Echo. These are the 6 defenders who had a 1.5 before this update, but going into it now no longer have any zoom optics whatsoever. Every other defender that had a magnified scope last season is getting a 2.5 this season, except for these 6 characters. Now on the other side of the coin, there is one defender who didn't have a magnification before this update, but will be gaining one in Deadly Omen, and that would be Melusi. Melusi is getting a 2.5 scope on her MP5, despite not having any zoom optics whatsoever last season, and so now she can run the same scopes as her other 1-speed MP5 wielding friends, those being Dog and Rook. That's all I'm going to cover for this video, but there are actually 2 more buffs and 2 more nerfs that came with this season, but I did just cover those in my video about the shield rework, and so to save repeating myself, I would urge you to go and watch that video instead. So please go and watch that, it would help me out a lot. There will be a link somewhere on screen and down in the description, but let me know your thoughts on this season's changes down in the comments. It certainly feels like to me there were far more indirect nerfs than there was buffs, and so I'd be interested to hear how you guys feel about that. But that is it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, then please do remember to subscribe and like and share with your friends. It would really help me out. You can find my socials on screen here, but yeah, that is it from me. I will see you in the next one.